fun. All aboard! Welcome to the All Aboard podcast. I am your host, Brandon Freitas. I am here today with our first inaugural champion. Step aside, Jimmy. You weren't the first. John, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, he's got
You
the first
touch
ring.
that. First
I love
champ
it.
gets to keep it.
Yep.
That's the rules. That's what I was told.
Those are the rules. And congrats again. One day I hope to get my name on the trophy. We'll see if it's this year. I don't know. Right now I'm just the lucky guy winning matchups. So we'll
Hey,
see
you
how
just
it
gotta make
holds.
a trade with me, and that gets you on the right path.
Yeah. Hey, we've made quite a few trades. I feel like our trade relationships at probably an all-time high right now. We're
So
churning
many.
them out
I've
every
lost
couple of
track.
weeks. Yeah, I've lost
I've
track,
lost
so that's a
track.
good thing.
Yeah, we have good negotiations. We work in a similar way.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
professionally, it was a pleasure working together as well.
oh, always is, John. I know we have part one, we'll have part two coming up, so we're always trying to fit it within the parts. So I want to open up the floor to you because I was told we have trial by podcast as subject number one, and you're coming on to defend your honor after that I don't know what to call it, but like insightful, not insight, but inciting from Jimmy
Mhm.
taking a
Mhm.
shot at everyone's team, and I'll just open the floor to you to defend yourself
Yeah,
now.
I've noticed a trend the past couple of months where I'm catching quite a few strays in the league chat, in the league text, and I think it's unwarranted. So I had to come and demand a trial by podcast, Oberon style or Tyrion style, if you will, because I think it's undue. I think it's a little bit unfair, and I have support for myself. So the
Let's
defense
go.
has commenced.
Okay.
So I've broken this out, wrote in a few notes. And first of all, I have made trades with every single team in the league except for Travers. Given our trajectories, we're just not compatible trade partners right now. So before anyone goes thinking I'm favoriting Ben or giving him sweetheart deals, that's not the case. I trade with everybody.
Hmm.
Number two, I'm an equal opportunity bad trader. If you want somebody to fleece, step right up. I'll make a bad trade with you. One of our probably five members have gotten the better of me in trades, starting with our trade of Jamal Williams, Van Jefferson, where I gave you Jamal Williams and he turned around and rushed for 20 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Van Jefferson is the most worthless player on my team. Every time I submit a waiver claim, he's the person I'm dropping, and I get outbid every time because I traded you all my Fed. And then I went and traded with Edwin, where I gave him a second and Derek Carr for Carson Wentz and Hunter Renfro. Carson Wentz no longer in the league until about 5 minutes ago. And Hunter Renfro goes from this 1,000-yard receiver to 200 yards. So another terrible trade. Then I trade a second to Mark for Isaiah Spiller and Demarcus Robinson. Terrible. Aside from Van Jefferson, Isaiah Spiller's the second least useful player on my team. And Demarcus Robinson's not even in the NFL. And then most recently, my Sam Howell, Marquise Brown trade, where you guys were very gentle about that on the podcast. But in hindsight, it was a pretty bad trade where I sent a second and Sam Howell to Alex for Marquise Brown in a super flex league with a QB who's top 8 right now. So I've made plenty of bad trades across the league. It's not, and I actually think my trades with Ben were pretty good for both sides. So before you start thinking that I'm getting the wrong end of these trades and I'm only trading with Ben, let's just take a step back and look at the track record, the poor
The
track record that I have with this league.
the
So
co-champion comments coming in and out. I will add on to your defense because my job here as commissioner is to stir the pot during the podcast, agree with the subject who is on at all times, and then take shots at all other owners. So Jimmy can step back up now. And number one, I don't think there are cheaper owners in this league than Jimmy and probably Edwin. And these are two of the owners who are griping that Ben's been getting these sweetheart deals. I don't see them ever stepping up with their capital. If they're losing on paper or if it's not in their favor on paper, I'm not even sure they're picking up the phone. So I want to add that onto your defense. I feel like there are some owners in this league clutching their pearls.
Oh yeah, that's in my back pocket. I had I had offered Kelsey to Jimmy first. I think I offered him Kelsey for two firsts and McBride. McBride was a third round pick. So it's pricey. And he said, he's like, that's too expensive for an old tight end. I said, all right. And he never counter offered. Then Edwin and I were talking about Kelsey, and he was offering me like Juju and Damian Harris. They're just guys
Garbage,
that,
garbage.
yeah, maybe mid-season trade acquisitions, but just being trying to get a good deal out of it. And I'm like, I can't do this. And ultimately, Kelsey was the last piece I dealt. So I ripped apart my team well before Kelsey was traded. And going back even further, I think initially I put Keenan Allen, Lockett, Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, some of my older guys on the block. 2 months, nobody said anything, not a single offer. You and I talked about Eckler. I and
Hmm.
I made offers to many people, Tam included. Mark and I talked about Aaron Jones, and nobody would bite. So
Yep.
all of a sudden, Ben swoops in with his big purse and his war chest, as you've called it, and
Yep.
makes a fair offer. And he got a little bit of a buy in bulk discount, Costco style, but I I got a haul of draft picks. I got a QB2 and Baker. And so I think it's very accurate what you're saying, where other owners are trying to get a good deal, whereas Ben was just being aggressive and fair. And he is he has talked shit to us for the last 18 months. And so I guess he's
I
kind of
don't think
the
that's
lead
gonna stop.
villain in a way, but he is decisive with his offers and he's fairly reasonable to negotiate with.
Mhm.
And he stepped up and pushed his chips in. I'm not going to hold back players and not go along with my plan of rebuilding just because Ben talks crap to us on the league chat. And I know when he wins the title, wink, wink, that no jinx is here, that he's gonna shove it in our faces for like 10 years as long as this league goes on. But I got good draft capital and
Yeah.
some young players, Devon A. Chain, Fryermuth, other guys. I got QB2 and Baker, and I have like 5 first round draft picks now. So all of those trades in hindsight, even months later, I still think were pretty fair for both sides. So, and yeah,
And you know what? That's you saying you think it's fair too. I would say like, and correct me if you feel differently. I feel like no one's more critical of themselves than you are. You are very critical of your own moves. So like if you're saying you still think they're fair, I think that tells you something right there, you know?
happy with where our teams are. Ben should be happy with where his team was. He
Yep.
still had a good team even without my guys. Kelsey puts him over the top, and Keenan Allen's having a career resurgence at 31 years old. But yeah, I think it was fair. And
The other, the other point I'd add on about Ben, and sorry to cut you off, John, is like I think Ben understands that when you're coming in as a prospective buyer, like there's a general market. You can find like the trade calculators online, like different sources. Everyone disagrees on valuation. So, but when you're the buyer and you're trying to get the player off someone's roster, you need to do something a little extra to entice them, I feel like. And our market and our league has sort of shown that where like when you're buying, you're paying a little over market to get the guy and get the guy you're going for. I think if you try to buy always at market, it's an uphill battle. And if I'm a seller too, it's like look, I'm not just going to give you a sweetheart deal. Like you have to get him from me. And I think we have almost like 2, 3 years of this built up where it's like, hey, if you're buying, you're paying extra, and some of those trades don't work out. Like I feel like in the long run, it's easier to win as the seller because of that. Plus draft picks always go up in value, but that's a whole nother topic. But
Right. That's the inverse relationship of picks
yeah,
versus veterans.
exactly. And that's the deal you make. Are you going for a championship? Are you going to pay? Like, I do think, and like, I called some owners out. I'm going to call Edwin out on every podcast. We have a great relationship. It's part of the fun. But I do think that that's sort of like sometimes owners aren't as willing to pay the piper to buy their guy, and that's why you don't end up with.
Right. It's a hesitation and a frugal, risk averse mindset that a lot of us have, but you kind of have to let go of if you want to make your team better immediately. And so, going back to, I guess, the beginning of it all, my team had to rebuild.
Mhm.
My team was so old, no depth, no draft capital, and I had to rebuild. If I had gone into the season without making those trades, I'd have a bunch of 30-year-old wide receivers, Aaron Jones, who's about to be 29, Eckler, and I'd
Pup
be
is
screwed.
30.
I wouldn't have Will Levis. I wouldn't have Baker. So it was something I felt I had to do to make my team better.
Yep.
And it was opened up to everybody. A lot of teams had draft capital, and only one team really stepped up. But I did make trades for you with Cup,
Hmm.
Aaron Jones, with John B. So I hope that my case has been made. The defense rests.
The defense. I wish to confess.
Yes, I wish to confess. I confess that I helped make Ben's team better, and he is going to shove it in our faces. But I also
You're
made
not
my
on
team
trial
better.
for making Ben's team better.
Exactly. Yes. Not
I had to
on
throw
trial
some
for being a
GOT in
dwarf.
there.
And
Well,
so,
no, we appreciate it. We're gonna need more of these trial by podcasts. And it's funny you mentioned Ben too. Like he's definitely gonna crow about it, but like I feel like that's part of what makes this league great. Like there's so much activity on the message board. Like so many people want to win, and it just like it makes it better and better, I feel like as we get more deeper and deeper into this thing.
right, I'm a little more reserved with my trash talking. So if you had 10 of me in a league, it would be boring. So we need the Bens. We need the Tams. We need everybody. It takes
Yeah,
takes the whole crew to make it work.
it really does. It really does, John.
Are there
Um,
any deals of mine that especially stuck out to you as good or bad? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I think the Aaron Jones one is interesting because I think it's really panned out just in terms of he's had a hamstring problem all year. I felt like a second round pick was a very fair deal for both sides, and then maybe John B hasn't fully gotten the return on that investment yet, so that's worked out. Funny though, as we talk about clutching their pearls, I do remember, and just make a face that I can stop right away. But you received an offer previously from another owner. I heard from the other owner as well, and I occasionally give him shit for it. And I'm like, you offered a third round pick for Aaron Jones. Like that is such a freaking insulting offer. It's not
Insult.
even funny.
Right.
Like third round picks in our league are like you're going for like a really old, like maybe flex only type player, or you're going for like the unknown upside. Like that's sort of what a third round pick is, or like even sometimes used as trade grease. But like to get Aaron Jones, like when he's healthy, a surefire starter in our format, that was just trying to take advantage of value. And
Yeah.
Jimmy, that was an awful, awful trade. But the second round pick from John B, when he came in with that, I thought that was more fair value. And I would say long term, I think that one's really worked out for you.
Right. And that was, I think, is fair. It was like you said, it was a second. I think I got a third and some fab,
Hmm.
which off-season fab I used to turn into either Tillman, Cedric Tillman on the Browns, or a Abanikanda, Jets, like fifth running back, who for
Yep.
some reason can't get an opportunity. And Jones has had two big games and he's been hurt otherwise, but it seems like
Mhm.
he's rounding into form. He's getting healthy. And if he becomes Aaron Jones again, that's huge for John B. In which case, we both benefit. I don't know if I still have that second round pick. It might have gone in either the Deontay trade or the Marquise Brown trade, but
Additional capital.
I think it's working out. I guess another question. Do you think my purchasing is premature? Should I have waited until the off season or next year?
So I think it's a complicated question. I think if someone were to go from like the start of their plan, you probably planned all along to just wait for the off season, remove that risk off the table, and then go from there. I think it's harder in reality to truly do that. Like, and I've been in this position and I made mistake purchases year one in this position, like trading future seconds. I don't want to make Jimmy feel too good, but future second for Denzel Mims, future second for Ronald Jones. And it's like you get impatient and you want to improve your team right away. And I think what you did that I really like is you got proven wide receivers, Deontay Johnson and Marquise Brown, and we can quibble on their upside. We can all disagree on valuation, but they're two players who are starters in our format, and they're going to be wide receiver twos, flexes at a bare minimum. So I think sometimes in this league, you have to go against what's the perfect plan at the beginning and go for, well, the opportunity's there now and I need to take it because maybe that opportunity is not going to be there in the off season. So I'm not sure I would say that you prematurely bought. Definitely the Sam Howell would be the hardest one because it's like you bought and then you sold. I know the sack numbers have been coming down. He's been looking pretty good, and like I honestly don't know what I feel about him yet. I feel like he's athletic. He's got a good arm. He makes good plays. I was very concerned while you had him was when he was getting like he was giving up like 5 sacks a game and costing the team, and I thought he was going to get benched. I honestly did. Of course, week one with Alex all of a sudden thinks he got this massive return on investment. So
Yeah, I think I made that trade offer on Thursday of that week. And like you said, at the time, there was a lot of sentiment that he might get benched or he's just looking terrible. And Jacoby Brissett's sitting there. And so I normally rescind trade offers before the games start. And I just totally blanked and
yeah,
forgot that that trade offer was out there. Naturally, he has a career game, and Alex goes and accepts the trade. I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, I should have looked.
which
I'm still,
couldn't have been a more Alex move. I do like, and part of the reason I do this is not to put pressure on owners, but the exploding trade offer is nice because I'll do it like a day later because I'll be like, I want to forget about this thing, like knowing
yeah,
me. So
the
just let it
bomb,
expire on its own.
the
Yeah.
Mario Kart bomb or whatever it
Yeah.
is definitely what I'm going to do going forward. But
Yeah.
I know I had to catch his attention because I've made trade offers before and he doesn't typically respond.
Yeah.
So, all
Sounds
right, I
about
got to
right.
catch his eye. And I like Marquise Brown. He's
Yeah.
produced wherever he's been, despite some weird situations with offensive system and quarterback. He's due for a contract, 27 years old. So him and Deontay are about the same age. Those two
Mhm.
guys kind of be not my next wide receiver one and two, but the building blocks to get there. When
Yeah.
I draft Marvin Harrison Jr. this offseason, he'll be next
Oh,
year. Spoiler alert.
call it a shot. Call it a shot.
Yeah, and I'm honestly losing sucks.
It
I was
does.
0-8, and I'm like, this sucks. It was miserable looking at my roster. You know, it's bad when you have to scroll down on your screen to find something you feel good about on your roster. And I
Yeah.
see draft picks. I got to scroll all the way down to my
Mm.
laundry list of draft picks before I can actually be like, okay, I
Yep.
feel good about this because my team was terrible. Now that I got
Yep.
Deontay, got Marquise, got a chain, a Chen, however you say his last name. And now I still do have the draft picks. So starting to feel better about it. Finally got the win
Yep.
over Tatum, the other tanker. And so it's curious to get your take on my general approach. I'm still kind of waiting for the draft to get those blue chip guys and
Yeah.
maybe a big veteran like you did with Diggs. But
Mhm.
couldn't just sit by and watch the losses pick up and start Tank Bigsby in my flex when he's getting
Yeah.
3 carries a game. So that's
I think
good.
you had that game versus Ben too, and really when you're in that position where you're at the bottom of the league, you're looking at the flashes. Like what's my high upside? And like I think we've started to see it from both you and Tam, where some of the stalwarts are starting to play better. You guys are early in the year it was like, oh, it's going to be tough to get a win. But I think now it's like you guys could spike on any week, which is nice to have. And that's what you want. You want to see that going into next year to know you're going to take that next step in the rebuild. So,
Right. And that's the kind of the John B trajectory where I wouldn't say his path was a rebuild, it was kind of just a build. He
yep,
started very young at the startup draft, and in both years, his team got off to a rocky start because he was kind of feeling his way through it. But then he would go like 500 down the stretch and win 3 or 4 games in the second half of
yep,
the season. And so, like you said, that's what I'm hoping to see. Now he's a great team. He's top 5 team
yep,
and he did it right. He's done it well by being patient and being aggressive at times with the couple trades he's made. So hopefully that's kind of the trajectory I'll be
yep.
following. Hopefully not the trajectory Tam's following because I have to beat Tam.
I can't throw more shade on him. I went overboard last podcast, so I will remove myself from the Tam conversation this time.
Oh, like I agree with what Jimmy said. Tam's dangerous. He's got the bones, I guess, to be a good team. Now he's just got to use that draft capital and go for it. It's kind of similar to Travers, where Travers is even a better spot than John I, where they have all these like flashy young pieces, but they just don't have a complete team yet.
Yeah.
And but they have the capital to do it.
They could be
So
scary. The thing is, what scares me is John I, because knowing Travers, and I know he's been in the Dynasty League for a while, he even told me, he's like, I've been perpetually rebuilding in this other Dynasty League. And you kind of see it the way he acts. Like he's always getting like the top draft picks, but then never really like pushing chips in. He's just acquiring more and more draft picks. And it's like you're in perpetual rebuild mode. What scares me is like John I is bright. Like like he's played fantasy with us in our other redraft. Like it might take him a little while to figure out the particular league or dynasty in general, but their team has a lot of young blue chips plus two firsts this year. If Alex misses the playoffs, that's two lottery picks this year.
2 years in a row.
And then they have my first next year from the Charbonnet trade. So they have two more firsts. So it's like they're sitting with a lot of capital that they can use to acquire pieces. I think if they, and we've seen this with Tam, like I said last, I end up going back on Tam anyway, but like I think when you only build through the draft, it's a long, long, long road. I think you have to call your shot on some veterans, which is what you've done, because like proven talent, like they're good. You draft Jamison Williams, you draft Sky Moore, you don't know what they are. And like to be fair, like I'll take a shot at my own. Like Zach Charbonnet is not working out for a first round pick right now. I traded a future first for a second. I
Right.
like the talent, but the opportunity's not there. So like I don't know. There's so many uncertainties in the draft, and that's where the draft is where you can get your next like Olave Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. Or what JSN wishes he was.
What he might
We'll
still be
Hmm. I don't
picking
know
it
about
up.
that. We'll see. We'll see. But that's where you get your future stalwarts, I would say, from the draft. But you can't only do the draft because there's going to be, for every one of those, you're going to run into those Sky Moores. You're going to run into those players. James Cook in our league is on his third team or fourth team. I'm losing track,
About to
so
be
it's like,
fourth.
yeah. So
Right.
I do think it's a mix because you do need a little bit of both. And our lineups are so deep that you can't just like wait and like slowly build. Like by the time you get enough of those young guys competing, like your other guys are going to be old.
Right. three
So,
to 4 year window that you can
yeah,
reasonably project, maybe even 2 to 3 years.
I think yeah, I
And it's
agree.
can all be over. One ACL, one Achilles injury,
Yeah,
Cam Akers, rest in peace.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's a tough game that we're playing.
It's nice that it's 10 teams. I do like that because you're never as far away as you think you are. Like 4 teams miss the playoffs, and generally there's at least 2 that are trying to lose in a given year. So then it's like, can you beat 2 other teams to get into the playoffs and have a shot? So I do like the setup in terms of like it's supposed to be about trying to win, and you need to rebuild occasionally. But my point is, I feel like if you want to win, you're never far enough away that it's impossible, you
Right.
know?
If you really go in like you've proven, like John B has shown, like Ben is proving, 1 or 2 years might be all you need
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
turn things around and get back in playoffs. Maybe not be the contender, but you had a tough year one, huge off season, and you were in playoffs year two.
Hmm.
Now
Yeah.
you're a top three team. So, and that's doable. You have to be very adept at this game, but it's
I do
possible.
also like you're kind of taking sort of like you're doing what has long been my sort of like strategy in Dynasty, which is like trade, 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 trade. Like you're gonna lose. If you only occasionally trade, the losses hurt way more. But when you trade a bunch, like it's like, what's your trajectory? Are you mostly improving the team? Then you don't worry about, oh, I traded all this for Brandon Cooks or I lost on Calvin Ridley. Like the trajectory of the team is going up, which I think is the biggest thing.
Right? Short memory, just
Yeah.
like a cornerback. Gotta have a short memory. It's
I was a
like
goalkeeper in high school, so I definitely couldn't remember anything.
I was bemoaning my bad trades because those the bad ones do stick in your
Oh,
mind.
I just brought them up top of my head.
You can't let it freeze you. You
Yeah.
just got to keep going, keep moving. And I've made a ton of trades. I think some of them are working out okay. I'm in better shape now than I was 2 months ago. That's for
Yep.
sure. So hopefully just keep building and we'll see between me, Tam, and Travers who gets back first.
Yep. I do like it's gonna be a fun. I'll tell you, like the season hasn't been fun, but there's only 5 games left. You get through those 5 games, you're in building mode. Like sure you'll watch the playoffs, like,
Yeah,
but for the most part, when you're not in the playoffs, you're not like you're paying attention to the league because it's I'm sure like this league's just crazy in general, but like you're about 5 games away from starting your off-season plans for the most part. So
countdown to the draft.
yeah. The
Uh,
draft is it's just so fun watching the prospects. And then even in that early offseason, we've seen as soon as trades open up, that seems to be the first window of flurry of activity.
for sure. The life cycle of the Dynasty League.
Yeah.
Off season will be more fun than the regular season for me for 2 years, but it's part of the process.
Yeah.
I do feel a little bit not scummy, but tanking isn't really a
Not your
classy,
thing. Hmm.
it's not really my style, but like I said, my team was old and crappy, and I didn't want to be left holding the bag on everybody. So I probably sold too early in some cases, and then in some cases I sold at a good time. So we'll see. Honestly, it kind of feels like 50-50 if I were to go through each of the guys. Keenan Allen, huge mistake. Tyler Lockett, seems like that one's working out. So,
Hmm.
but I guess you didn't even mention the lottery odds. So,
Yep.
right when
30,
I tank,
30, 20, 20.
the chance of
Um,
getting the number one pick drops by about 25%.
it's
I
just
don't
in there. So like I think the nice part is that rule change alone made last week versus Tam palatable. Because if not for that, you're like, what? Tam's gonna have a 50% chance at like the number one pick. Like, I'll be asking and bringing up. I'll reveal this on the podcast. I'll be bringing up completely even odds once again next year. If it gets shot down, it gets shot down. It's the league. I'm bringing up a
25,
rule.
25.
I think what I like about completely even odds is it's like now it's like you're just incentivized to make the playoffs. If you miss the playoffs, you have an equal lottery chance, but you're not incentivized to lose more than lose, which I think is a good thing. And I think the matchup you versus Tam was an improvement from last year, where like if you like I said, if you lost that and those were the rules, like you'd be like, oh, dude, like It was like what was it, 50? I can't even remember. It was like 50, 30. No, it
2010,
was
50, 30.
or 50, 20, 15, 10. I think. It
Maybe that's what
was,
it was. Basically, if you were dead last, you were getting the first pick,
yeah,
barring just bad
unluck.
luck.
Yeah.
And I think
So
it
I
was two
think,
years in a row the worst team got the first pick.
yeah.
So, but yeah,
And
I agree. Lineup tanking is not
don't like
kosher.
that. Yeah, I agree. That's what I was going to bring up. I think trading and
Tanking,
putting yourself in a position to improve your roster from like a build perspective is like that's what you got to do.
yeah,
Lineup tanking where you're not intentionally not starting your best lineup, never been a big fan of that.
right. So the lottery odds changing do change that because
Yeah,
I would have been incentivized to lose last week if we didn't change the odds.
correct.
But
Yep.
for the fact that it doesn't matter and the
Yeah,
fact that pride, obviously,
yeah.
I just want to win a game this year.
That's what I
I'm
love.
staring down the barrel of 0 and 14, and I'm starting to get nervous. I'm like, oh God, am I going to go 0 and 14? But so I was like really trying to win. So that was,
Love it.
but yeah, enough about my team.
Well,
Sorry,
I do want to
guys.
add on, like, just like historically, like I've known you a good amount of years now. We've played fantasy for a while. Like, you're competitive, and I know like losing is not your style. Like, you're the kind of guy where you're gonna do everything you can to compete until like the signs are there and that's done, you know? And I feel like that's what you did. So I don't think there's any shame in that game. No shame in that game.
Thank you.
Successfully defended yourself. I know, look, there's been no investigation by the league because I know there was no collusion. Aggressive buy from Ben was positioned well, and just another shot at some of the other people out there bidding as we get it close to the trade deadline. A couple of owners who were a little more concerned with the value than actually acquiring the player.
Right. What's best on paper may not be realistic.
Yeah.
So I guess what do we have? 5 minutes? I'm looking at that timer. Should we
Yeah, we got
review
about 6 minutes, so
the
we
Mixon
can,
trade?
yeah, the Joe Mixon trade. When it first went down, my opinion of it was I didn't see enough of a difference for this year between Cook and Mixon for Ben to also give up. He gave up a second too, right? A late
Second,
second.
third, 2 picks plus Cook.
Yeah. And I was like, ooh, that's a little like pricey. But of course, then you see the first week and you're like, Cook's not quite as involved. And maybe this is like, a win now move from Ben. So I do respect it from that perspective. The thing that I like about James Cook from a dynasty perspective is he's an asset that like helps you this year and also helps you in the future year. And what concerns me about Joe Mixon is like if you look at that contract, they already talked about replacing him last offseason. I don't see a world where he's like the unquestioned starter in Cincinnati next year. I think he's either coming back on a huge pay cut with competition or they're just going to cut him straight outright.
Right? And then he ends up with the Dalvin Cook trajectory. God
Exactly.
forbid. Yeah, I liked it for both sides. I think that's kind of where you landed, where Cook he has his warts. Well, for whatever reason, that system in Buffalo is just not running back friendly. And maybe he's not cut out for a 3 down role, even though he seemed to do pretty well with it earlier in the season. So Ben's getting away from that headache, plus having a running back to go along with Josh Allen from the same team might be counterproductive from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to give up a first to get Mixon. And he got what is a top 10 running back for his title run.
Hmm.
And he was kind of light at running back, honestly, to he had Eckler, and I think Mixon's now his second. I'm not even sure who else he has at running back other than rookies, Tajay Spears, Kendre Miller. But
He
he was
had,
actually thin at running back. And so this was a big trade for him to change that and really get a solid number two right behind Eckler. What does he have here?
Yeah, because I think Miles Sanders was one he had, and Gibson, and those two, that purchase from Tam didn't work out. So yeah, I actually didn't even realize how thin he was at running back before
Right?
that
If you're looking at
transaction.
it, it's like, who was even starting at RB2? Well, it must have been Cook. And Cook's
Yeah,
been dreadful the last couple of weeks. So huge trade short term for Ben. Didn't have to give up a first, but did lose James Cook, who's an attractive asset, and a second, which seconds are honestly probably the most fungible currency in our league
they
because
definitely
it's a
are.
good
Yep.
draft pick, but it's not so much that it's going to hold up a trade. So you can get a
Yeah.
good player, but you're not going to like hold it tight to the vest. And then for Travers, like you said, getting rid of Mixon is probably going to look pretty good a year from now. Plus, he gets the draft pick, and he's got James Cook, 2 more years of a rookie deal. He's not a guy who's going to wear down just given the way he plays.
I think he is who he is. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like maybe he ends up as a James White.
Hmm.
They seem to underutilize him in the passing game for whatever reason. But, or maybe he moves on to another team and gets utilized properly. So
Yep.
I think it's good for both sides.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more on that side. At first, I was like, "Wow, Ben's really paying the piper," but like we said, sometimes you do have to offer a little bit more to pry a guy from someone. Because even so, it's a dynasty league. It's not like if you don't sell a guy, you see what value they have next year. It's not like you're completely out of pocket if you don't trade them. So, but I think this is a good natural ending point for us, John. And I think when we come back, what we want to discuss is the upcoming trade deadline. Is that correct?
Yeah. Figure we'll look at the teams, see who's going to be buying and selling, and it's all conjecture, but might
Yep,
as well take a guess, give some people some ideas.
love it. Awesome. Well, we'll be back in a little bit. Again, John, there'll be a processing. I'll message you on the side, probably about 10 minutes, and we'll
Sounds
hop back
good.
on. But thank you everyone for listening to part one, and we'll be back for part two.
Bye.